welcome back to another very, very special episode of Gear 182. Today we have from Fender, Michael Schulz. Do you want to be called just Schulz, Michael, Mike? What does the
You can
world
call me
call you?
whatever you want. If my mom watches this, she'll say his name's Michael, but most people call me Schultze.
Schulze.
Let's
Okay.
see.
Schultze
Okay, so
or Mike.
Daddy's off the
Michael.
table, right? Okay, just making sure.
See how the interview goes. So Schultz, for people that don't know, so you are you're head of artist relations. So maybe kind of give us a little bit of a bio of what your job entails exactly with that title.
Sure. The title's actually, it's a head of signature artists. So
Okay.
we have a division of Fender, like most, guitar manufacturers that are dedicated to working with artists, marketing opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. I've been at Fender. Halloween was my 18th anniversary, and my passion has always been signature. It's just, to me, the most exciting. You get to work so hand in hand with artists. So a few years ago, Fender created this role for me, which is head of signature artists for FMIC. So I do look over all of the signature projects. That is, artists who have had current models for a long time, estates, Jimi Hendrix estate, George Harrison, etc. All those, as well as finding these new projects to work on, which which is, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. So technically that is my job and that is what I do. So a lot of the signature models you see out there, I've had my hands in at some point.
Stefan, I want to throw a question out if that's okay. Do you seek out artists or do they seek you out?
Both, really. I mean, there's a lot of times where it's very fluid, like where, for instance, I was fortunate enough to work with Flea on his signature basses, and I met him because at the time he owned a studio, and he was working with Travis Barker and Flea. I'm sorry, Travis Barker and Tim Armstrong. So they were just recording for fun, and I'm really close with Tim. So, you get those opportunities where you meet these other artists and the opportunity kind of presents itself and you're like, hey, you're so famous for using this 1961 jazz bass that is super rare. It's your number one recording bass and your fans would love to get their hands on it. And so a lot of it happens like that. A lot of it is connections and relationships. There are times where, a lot of it too starts in the artist relations or artist marketing department at Fender, where we build relationships with artists. And then over time, they hit this peak where you're like, oh, you blew up, or you have this instrument in mind that you've been using for a long time, or you kind of piece this instrument together. It's something unique and it's different. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that they come in, or the model ends up coming out. But most of it is relationships, or there's obviously some white whales that we chase, and it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort and energy. So yeah, you're always looking for opportunities, always have your ear out, always finger on the pulse, ready to present it to the artist and to Fender and figure out what's the best thing to do for the consumers and the fans.
Cool.
So what was one of your favorite instruments that you had a hand in helping out on?
It's hard. It's like, who's your favorite kid?
Yeah.
There's so many. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. Obviously, Tom was so much fun. His fans have been demanding this guitar. Like, I started at Fender in the call center answering phones, and like I remember people calling and asking, like, do you have any left over in the warehouse? And like it never really ended up until we released the Strat. Like, it's kind of shocking. People have been asking for it for so long. And it was cool because we launched that on July 25th. And the reason I remember the date is because my son was born the day before. So I'm technically on paternity leave, laying on the floor in a hospital, and I'm just like fingers crossed. Like, I don't want to be online too much. I'm dealing with family stuff. I just hope everything works out well. And it was to see that come full circle. It was an amazing project. fortunate enough to have worked with George Harrison's family on recreating 3 of George's guitars over the past I don't know, maybe decade or so, maybe a little bit longer. That's always fun. I have a great relationship with their family, so it feels like you're like working with your friends on something that is so special.
Yeah.
That's definitely up there for me as one of my like highlights, and just personally, it's just like being able to be close to that is such an honor. Tim Armstrong, he was like kind of my first idol. So to be able to work with Tim and get to know him just like through happenstance, working on his extremely successful Hellcat acoustic. That was awesome. I mean, there's just so many. Billie Eilish, her ukulele, working with Billie and her team and her family, they're also amazing. Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. I mean, the list really goes on and on and on, but it's really hard to say what my favorite is. I don't know. It's in there. I mean, it's in there somewhere. It's like, I think depending on the day, and you know, if I'm in the mood to play a 3 single coil Strat, it might be this one. If I'm in the mood, I don't know. It's such a pleasure. It's such an honor. All of them are,
And I like how you brought up the signature guitar thing, because like, even though it's a Tom DeLonge signature, I remember being a teenager and this guy I knew had a Hispanic mother that bought a surf green TD Strat, had no idea who Tom or Blink was, but she just thought it was beautiful and it was an easy guitar to learn on. So like, there is a big movement of signature guitars can work in any band or any style, and just something unique about them.
Totally. And I think nostalgia too. I think that has a huge, I actually kind of rang a bell for me when I was looking through all the comments on the day of launch for Tom's guitar. This gentleman commented something along the lines of, "Oh, my wife's gonna kill me. I bought a couple of these, but nostalgia is a hell of a drug." And it really struck a chord, because it's like what you just said. I mean, like people always reflect on their younger selves, and like reliving those memories and those moments. And the thing that was so like, I feel like with Tom Strat and a lot of signature stuff, people are so connected to it. Like, we released maybe 4 or 5 months ago the Mike McCready Strat, Mike from Pearl Jam, his old 1960s Strat, Beat to Hell. And his fans are the same. Like, they were like in college dorms, like listening to 10 and listening to all their old Pearl Jam albums, and then they can kind of go back in time and have this thing, and it's like, it's physical. You can touch it, you can play it, you can make art, you can create all this stuff, and it's like, it kind of brings you back. And so that's a huge fun part of it. But then also on the flip side, being able to do projects or products that inspire the future. Like if an artist like doesn't have that, like, oh, I played this guitar for 30 years and everyone knows it, and working with Shawn Mendes on his Music Master, the floral design on it, because he was inspired by a fan's artwork and did this. I have this idea and this concept, and I think we did a really good job of putting it out there, creating this demand, and now it's something that fans and Shawn himself can look back on and be like, that was a moment in creativity where I was inspired by this fan's art, and here's where I was in life. And we kind of like, you kind of cement it, and it's out there, and it's it's super special.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool way to think about it too. It's just that moment in time when it does, like, when you look at these, we'll talk more about it obviously in a little bit, but like these Tom Strats, and like, picking one up, even the green one that's behind me, just picking it up, it just reminds me 2000, 2001, and what was going on during that time, and what was life like, what was relationships like, and it really does bring you kind of back to that. So that's really cool to think of it like that.
One of my partners at Fender, who works on the product team, he is a California cowboy, country cowboy hats, boots, tellies only. And it's just like, when we started working on this project, he was like, man, I got into guitar. The first song I learned was Damn It. And like I'm looking at the renderings of this guitar, and it's bringing me back to my, like, my middle school bedroom, and like the posters on my wall and everything. It's just such a, it's like you're almost getting in this like personal time machine in your brain and going somewhere else,
Yeah.
So your collaboration with Tom, it's been pretty notable to say the least right now. So maybe if you can kind of give us some, how did it all start? Obviously he's playing Starcasters now. What were kind of those early conversations looking like for him coming back to Fender?
Interesting question, really good question, and it goes way back. And I was actually looking for a photo to share with you guys. I have it. It's so low res, but I'll pull it out. But I mean, when I live in Los Angeles, but I started at Fender corporate in Arizona, and I met the guys in Angels and Airwaves at the Marquee Theater in Tempe. And I remember I was in the dressing room with Matt, the bass player, who I haven't talked to in a minute, and I just have nothing but love for that dude. And Tom came in, and he had this, like, it looked like a smaller road case. I think it was on wheels, and a computer, like a laptop. Yeah. And I remember he's like, "Oh, you're from Fender." I mean, this is years ago. And he was just like, I want to get a semi-hollow guitar. And so I remember showing him some of the Gretsch White Falcons, and I sent him a White Falcon, and I just don't think it did what he needed. I think maybe too much feedback or the pickups or something. It wasn't modified or anything. It was just a Falcon. But I've always been in touch with someone in their world through my time at Fender, or Aaron and Elon, and all that. So there's always been something there. And I've worked on stuff outside of Fender with Macbeth years and years ago. So there's always that connection. And there was always like the phone was open on both sides, and it was easy to kind of work out. But really started with Aaron, and I'll say this: Aaron's one of my favorite people in this world. I love him. He inspires me. How direct he is and straightforward makes life easy when you're dealing with an artist in their camp and you're on behalf of a major corporation, if you want to call it that, which is what it is, but it doesn't feel like it. But Aaron was the one who really kicked the conversation off, because he's with Tom a lot, and I'm assuming they have deep conversations about gear. They're always, in the studio working on stuff and sounds and sonic and all this stuff. And he reached out to me and was like, "Hey, Tom's getting back with the guys, and we're looking for some kind of newer options in guitars." Tom, he's super interested in the Starcaster, but the old Starcaster headstock is just a little bit funky. I mean, people either love it or they don't. And so we took the opportunity just to go back to Brian Thrasher, Alex Perez in the model shop, and Alex was the one who worked with Tom on his first Stratocaster years ago. Yeah. So there's already that connection of Alex knowing, like, hey, this is the sound, this is the feel, I would do this to get the sound that he's maybe looking for after playing Fender and after playing Gibson, and this is kind of this weird mashup of it. But here's what I would do. So I would just go to Alex and trust him. He knows more about guitars than anyone I think I've ever met in my life. So I said, this is what he's looking for. Not crazy about the headstock. We don't make these guitars anymore. We did a run of them years ago from a different factory, and Alex and Brian were like, we think we can do it. We can figure this thing out. It's going to take a minute to figure out measurements and all that stuff, and we don't have the machinery to tool that body, and all these different things. So they gave me a ETA on it and said, hey, we think we can get this thing done. Here's when we think we can do it in this amount of time. Let's get all of the colors he wants, all of this stuff, pickups, all that. And we even tried by Alex, like, we obviously probably put Fender pickups in there, right? Like, yeah. Exactly. I don't think that sound's going to work for him. I think he's going to want, the Seymour Duncan. We have friends over at Seymour Duncan too, so we're like, we reach out to Brian McDonald, who runs Seymour, and Eric Duncan, the Seymour's son, and we're just like, hey, can you guys just send us a handful of these different kinds of pickups so we can just mess with them and put them in the guitars and figure this thing out? They were really cool. They like overnighted us stuff. And then, we made the guitars and kind of, I always have faith when Alex and Brian's hands are on the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's going to be really, really good. But, sometimes artists will get a guitar and say, oh, this is awesome, but can we change this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And, we sent Tom the guitars, and, he was just immediately like, he's like, shit, these feel great. They feel great. They sound great. They look great. I'm in, and can I get more? Because we're going to go on tour. We're like, okay, so like, let's stop what we're doing and let's focus on this right now. So that's how the Starcaster really came to be. And I mean, it was funny because we were texting, Tom and myself, and I said, man, if you post a picture of it, my DM's like, it's going to be a lot. I know it, and he was like, too late, and sent me his Instagram, showing that he had posted a picture of the guitars, or the one with the sticker on it. Yeah. I was like, oh, here we go. And of course, my DMs were like, ding, 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 ding. When can I get one? Where can I get one? How can I buy one? How can I make one? Do you have anything? I mean, it's still, to this day, it's like, it's nonstop.
Yeah. One of the things that Tom himself has been known to say is, don't give me credit for the Strat. Like, Alex really put a lot into creating that, and a lot of people don't even know who Alex is, and it's like, he's such a mastermind behind things. One of the questions I asked you when I first met you was what we get all the time, is it's like, well, Schulz, if I can pre-order a PS5 and I know that it's coming out, how come you don't tell us about guitars when they're coming out? But like you were just saying, it's a different world. Like, guitars are different.
Guitars are different. Yeah, I mean, most of our business goes through our amazing dealer network. So if you go into a Bizarre Guitar in Phoenix, Arizona, or if you go into Wildwood, or these guitar stores, we have such deep rooted relationships with them that we like to do everything in lockstep with them. So that's primarily why. And things can change in the future, and we've been doing a thing this year where we started teasing a bit, just like we did with Mikey Way and his Sparkle Bass, where it's a few days before, like, hey, something special's coming, and you already know what it is. We're not really alluding to it too much. We're not giving a lot of information, but just kind of preparing people as our dealers are getting the inventory, preparing fans and consumers, say, hey, this thing is coming, then there are some that we are just on complete lockdown, and NDAs are signed and whatnot, where it's just like, I wish I could, there's one I have brewing right now. I wish I could talk about it so bad.
Here's a fun question. Like, what's roughly how many secret artist models you've got brewing right now? Do some of them not come to fruition? Like, they fizzle out? Or, like, what's a rough number? Like, do you have, like, 5 or 10 you're working on? Or is there tons? Like, what do you think?
It changes, year to year, because, like, you're dealing with manufacturing, and you're dealing with woods, and you're dealing with, factories that a pandemic comes through and everything gets thrown off. So it's like, that's why, I mean, we work really fast to make sure that we're getting these, like, it's not this long drawn out 4 years of prototyping, and we really do our best to move as fast as we can to make sure that we are, we're staying on top of it. But we have, aside from the Fender brand, we have Squire, Gretsch Guitars, Jackson, Charvel, EVH, all these other brands. So we're constantly working on projects. Like, there's a lot of stuff, so it depends. There are years that there are less, there are years that there are more. There's there's just, it falls when it does. And I wish I could figure out how to streamline that process and be like, okay, cool. This year we're going to do X amount, and it's going to be
Yeah.
2 strats, 2 tellies, 2 bass, all that.
Yeah.
It's we're kind of at the mercy of the guitar gods,
And if it's a variation of a Strat, that's easier than doing like a whole unique new custom thing for sure.
It's going to be,
So how do you balance the artist's vision compared to what Fender can sometimes do, either with limitations or whatnot?
That's a good question too. I feel like when we get to the point of signature discussions, majority of the time, the artist is they're excited about it. They're in, and when we're doing something like Tom's guitar, where we're reissuing a guitar that we previously made, that's a bit easier because you're just like, hey, same let's keep this authentic to what it was. Obviously, over 20 years or so, there might be bridge pieces that are more modern and updated and better quality, whatever. So that's pretty easy. A lot of the stuff, like when we're replicating guitars, especially in the Fender custom shop, I mean, aside from the feel and the sound, like when we get to the point where it's like every scratch on the guitar is the exact same, you're dealing with like, I mean, it's like by hairs of that small of a scratch on a guitar, but an artist is like, I remember doing that scratch. Like Mike McCready, I remember throwing my Strat into my Marshall amp because I was just like on stage just going crazy, and I look at that every night. I see that he's speaking. I remember that. So there's that stuff. That could take a minute, but when we're designing newer stuff, we're always pretty upfront with the artist. Like, hey, let's push this as far as we can. Like, I know this is your dream. Let's get as close to it as possible. But if there is a point where we do have to pivot, if something's just like we're close, but this route would be better for the consumers, and here's why. Like I feel like our relationships with the artists are close enough where we can have that really, like fluid conversation. And like through the process, it's not like hey, we're gonna make a prototype for you. We'll be back to you in 6 months, 3 months, whatever. It's like there's like we're in communication throughout it, and the artists are typically really excited. So we're texting photos over. Mm-hmm. We're sending like, hey, here's where we are. Check this out, and So I mean, I honestly I don't think I've ever had a project that was like, okay, we're doing this, that didn't come out. So if that answers your question.
Yeah. So, when doing an artist signature line, what are some challenges that you typically do tend to face when trying to get it from the vision to in store or on the shelf?
That's also a really good question. I don't know. I truly don't know. I mean,
do they ever want a color that's not like a typical Fender color, and you just can't match it or something?
I worked recently closely with Bruno Mars on his signature Strat, and the color of the guitar it's a traditional Fender color, but after it sits on a different kind of guitar that's not a Fender, because back in the day a lot of the companies would use the same paints, same colors, but they would spray lacquer differently and they would age differently. So he had in mind this instrument that is 50 years old, that parts of it were hit with sunlight more than others, and the pigmentation of candy apple red is pulled out in different ways, and it was like this quarter-sized part of this guitar is what I want the whole thing to look like, and I mean, it is as complex as deep as I've gone on getting the color right. And what's sometimes challenging, going back to your last question, Stefan, is timelines. So we're we say, okay, we're going to be doing this project, here's the timeline for it, here's when it's going to come out, and you kind of work against that. And for a guitar like Tom's, you're like, okay, cool, it's a single pickup Stratocaster in famous Fender colors that we make currently. So like it's not hard. But then you're dealing with something where Bruno had this very specific like very specific color in mind. And I mean, we made, you know, a handful of prototypes, and it's like, you were like, oh my God, this is it. This looks great. And then you go meet up with him, and he gets his 50-year-old guitar out in the sun. He holds them up next to each other and like moves them, and like the light hits him differently. And almost there, 98% of the way there. I needed a little bit more like this. And you're like, okay, we hear you. We'll be back. So, you know, that's that can take some time.
That sounds different too, as when I was a teenager, my friend ordered the Mark Hoppus bass in pink, and in the musician's friend catalog it just said pink, and she called me and she said, Brian, you're gonna be upset, this isn't like the Scully pink, this isn't the bubblegum pink, this is like Pepto-Bismol. And so we called Fender, like 1-800 Fender or whatever, we were like, what is going on, we think our bass is messed up, and they said, no, that's just the standard Mexican color, that's the shell pink. And I was like, oh, okay. We were so disappointed.
Times have changed. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, over as a company like Fender, where, you know, Leo Fender's vision was always to grow and always just go way outside the box and create. You know, like, I don't want to say it's an easy part of the job, but like, I have a lot of faith in our factories being able to hear what an artist wants and match that. Like most times you get artists, when you show them a prototype, they get pretty shocked. Like, oh my God, like, you know. So I just feel like now it's easier. Like, you would, I don't know, there's maybe just more transparency too with social media and everything, where you're like, okay, Mark is playing this shocking pink bass that is pink. You almost have to put sunglasses on to look at it. It's so bright. And maybe back then it's like we only had shell pink out of our Ensenada factory. You know, we're like, this is as close as, I mean, it says pink, you know. And now it's like, oh, this looks just like the one Mark plays live, exactly. Same paint, same tone, same everything. You know, like Tom Surf Green, it looks like the Surf Green Strat that we released years ago. It looks like the one he played. It's, you know, it's that. So
right,
yeah, if that answers your question.
No, it does for sure.
So within the 18 years that you've been, and you touched on it a little bit, but you know, how else has, you know, the whole guitar industry evolved over the years from when you first started to now?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, there are a few milestones that I think I've seen in my career at Fender, kind of more, both of them maybe a little more recent, was obviously, you know, I feel like there was this era of guitar that it was like, it was just for the boys. It's for male, and female consumers and female fans, they got kind of left out of the equation or overlooked, and which is a huge disservice, because music is music to everybody, and creating art and creating music on your own and getting those emotions out and being able to write and all that stuff, it's not one or the other. Years ago, Fender had this big study, and it was pretty shocking to realize how many women play guitar, how many young women buy guitars. And, you know, for a long time, I think that we, probably more than 7 years ago, you know, we focused our marketing efforts more on male. And so now to see that evolve, and I know Fender does a really good job of it, but I know other companies do too, where it's just like, you'll see a big campaign and it's like, it's just a more diverse mix of talent involved. And I love that, because it's so crucial. It's so important. It's important to the artist. It's important to the fans. I mean, when we're working on big campaigns, we're going after a lot of big artists. They're like, cool, this is great. Like, do you have younger artists in this also? Do you have female artists in this? Do you have, like, just, they're asking for it as well. And I feel like we've done a good job of like kind of turning that steering wheel towards that. I feel like the progressiveness and being able to like encompass so many different people is so important. Yeah. And then really, you know, during COVID lockdown, you just see people, I mean, guitar sales were out of control. People didn't have inventory in stock for so many reasons, but I mean, like, I bought a custom shop Martin D28 during lockdown because I was like, well, I mean, everyone else is buying like go-karts and like cool scooters and
Yeah.
stuff, and I want to buy something nice. So, it's that too. You're stuck at home and like the world is on pause for the like first time in so many generations. You don't know what to do, and you're like, I'm gonna go listen to music. I'm gonna go like we were talking about, like I'm gonna take a trip down memory lane. And like you saw it in streaming services where
Yeah.
bands from like people were going back to look for the good times and their reminders, and I feel like guitar is such a big part of that. So yeah, I mean the it always changes. There's always so much room. Our CMO, who's just his brain is like this big and it's always just going. He says it really well. He says it's not just it's not or, it's and. So like yeah, let's look in that rearview mirror and let's work with artists of the past who are still inspiring the new and next generation of musicians and artists and creators. But let's also work with these younger artists who are developing and creating and all of that. And I think that's just such a nice thing to hear. And
Yeah.
there's a big enough company where like we have the capacity to do that. And I just having that and instead of the or, it just makes it feel better. It makes it
Yeah.
you can see the results.
Yeah, man, I'm kind of the controversial guy, so I'm probably gonna get paid for this. But like, as I'm getting older, me and Stefan are millennials. We're close to 40. We don't really care about like Slash and Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith. We want to see all these cool guitars of guys we grew up with, like Blink, Green Day, Sum 41, like stuff like that. So we really appreciate you, putting the effort into bringing these guitars to us. And that kind of leads into my next question. I looked at like the guitars that are like five figures for like, what was it, the Joe Strummer that came in the Anvil case. We want to be able to buy something like that for a custom shop Tom or Mark guitar. Is that something that one day we could look forward to as we get older?
I think the sky's kind of the limits. I mean, depending on the artists,
Yeah.
depending on the demand. I mean, like I want to say yes. Like we released a signature model out of the custom shop this year with maybe our youngest signature artist. His name is Tyler Bryant. Just this like shredder dude, blues dude from Nashville. He's incredibly talented, and kind of the same thing. He had this a story behind it. His dad worked, like extra shifts to buy his son, who's so into music, this pink custom shop Strat, and he did, and it got stolen. He ended up finding it, but he is so out, in front. And he's opening up for Guns N' Roses, and he's opening up for Aerosmith and all these bands, and he is so like it is. It's his thing. He's
Yeah.
so like, this is it, and he created this world within guitar that he is known for this thing. I don't know how old he is. I want to say in his early 30s. And Tyler, if you watch
Yeah.
this, I'm sorry. But so like we are focusing on that. I'm working on a custom shop guitar with an artist right now. Can't say who yet. It's going to come out
Yeah.
this year, but same thing. He is younger, and the guitar is something. It's like his dream creation, and the guitar is ungodly. One of the coolest
Yeah.
guitars you've ever seen. But I would love to see one day custom shop Tom DeLonge Strat. Like come from
Yeah.
the team built, not master built. Every scratch the same, but something like before we released Tom's and Sonata Strat again, like you could buy one of the old ones for a couple grand. It's like a Mexico guitar that's 20 years old for a couple grand, or for like 500 or 1,000 more, you could buy a custom shop team
Right.
built guitar
Yeah.
out of our USA Corona factory. It's like Tim Armstrong's Hellcat. We have the Hellcats and the skull inlays. So that's a bit easier to get away with. But yeah, I remember when I first started at Fender, you would like look through the old Fender Frontline catalogs, which was essentially Instagram at the time, for guitars. Yeah. And like you would see models that like a signature model, their name would be like in the neck, like it'd be like the inlays would be their, that's
their name
right there. But yeah, and Tom was like, "Can we throw the Blink logos in the in the things?" Like, it's gonna take a minute longer, but again, we're like, for Tom, we'll do. He's so amazing. We're like, we'll do whatever. We'll figure it out fast for you. But yeah, I think these days it does feel like a lot of people, they prefer the trapezoid, like the Gibson block inlays, or just the regular dot inlays. I'm a huge fan of dots. That's my thing. I just want dots. I don't want anything else,
So for those kind of aspiring to do what you do, Schulz, what kind of advice would you give them based off of your 18 years experience for them either to get started or to start doing, or?
That's a good question. I mean, I personally think for me, like I started at Fender when I was I just turned 22. I just aged myself right there. I'm 40 now. Oh. But like, I've always been like, the first thing I ever wanted in my life was a guitar. Like one of the first memories I can remember is my dad's Rickenbacker. I had to have been like 2 years old. Like guitar is Jimi Hendrix. Like guitar is my life. And I just couldn't, like, I don't know if when I was 22, I was like ready or set up to work in a corporation. Like, sometimes I still feel like I'm not like the corporate type, even though I've learned all the skills to be, so I am. But my advice would be like, find something you like are genuinely truly passionate about, and you like, I mean, I know it's so cliche, but like bust your ass and like you can make it happen. Like I grew up with, in my like high school bedroom, like above my bed is a picture of Tim Armstrong jumping with his Gretsch guitar, and all these years later, like I was able to replicate that and become so close with Tim and the Ramones and all these bands that just inspired my life, the Beatles, all these bands. Just like, I just feel like you put so much energy into something you love and it kind of draws you in. But I mean, that's kind of like a spiritual side of it. I think just like reality though is when you find something you love, like flip over every rock, talk to everybody, make yourself available. I mean, like I did this thing at Fender when I started in the call center where you would hear an executive's name a couple times and you'd be like, oh, okay, well, I mean, obviously this is a decision maker. I'm going to go meet them. I want to go talk to them. I want to learn how they did it. I want to learn why they did it. All this stuff. And it's just like, it's kind of just like that hustle. And, so that's the advice I would give. And just, don't get discouraged, because life's going to slam the door in your face in a really cruel way more than it's going to open it. And you just have to, keep fighting and until you get what you want.
So if somebody came up to you and said, okay, Schulz, we're going to make you an artist signature guitar, what would that look like?
Shit. Right now, I mean, it's hard because it's like, I'm not known for playing a certain thing because I'm not in Pearl Jam or the Red Hot Chili Peppers or Blink-182. But right now, Strats are my thing. I'm a Strat dude. Like I have Tellys, I have other brand guitars, I have Jazzmaster. Strats are my thing. First guitar I ever had. My dad's like, if you really want to get a guitar, it has to be a Strat because that's what Jimi Hendrix played. And something about the contoured body, when you sit, when you lay, when you stand, it's just like always comfortable. So it'd be a Strat for sure. And I also like, I'm just at a phase right now where I don't need a tremolo. I don't need a trem bar. And I don't really I'm starting to use the neck and middle positions more, but like truly, if like I play live, I'm usually in that bridge position, and I usually use strats with a humbucker.
Mm-hmm.
So my number one that I've been using, and I've used it live more just because I'm usually playing like loud punk stuff where I just need, like Tom, I just need a volume on. Like I don't need tone.
Yeah.
I just need that one position. But I have an American standard, because God, it's probably like 10 years old now. An Olympic white American standard Strat that I got. I bought it and through my employee discount, and I sent it to Alex Prez. And I'm like, Alex, Olympic white, tortoiseshell pickguard, 2 humbuckers, and Derek Duncan over at Seymour sent me a 59 like Les Paul style uncovered humbucker. I put that in the bridge, and then I got an Eddie Van Halen EVH, because Fender has the EVH brand, neck humbucker. So like either way, it's just fucking on, and it is loud, and it is just like my daughter and I covered it in like, we went to like Michael's and the art store and got like sequins and like all these old punk stickers, and like, I mean, it is like, you look at it, you're like, oh, what the hell is this thing? But it's my guitar and I love it. So Alex beat it up a little bit for me, and once Alex puts his hands on something, you're good. So it's truly I think it's my favorite guitar, you know. That'd be we call it the Schulze signature model.
Nice. So that should be on the shelf by what, spring? Is it going to be on?
Yeah.
Ready
With your name and the inlays. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep asking the dealers about it, please.
Stefan, you want me to do a couple rapid fire since we're getting close on time?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Schultz, where's the Starcaster, man? Where's this Tom DeLonge Starcaster? Is it coming? What can you tell us?
I have no idea. I have no clue.
Right.
Never heard of it.
How come when you released the Strat, you only did the same 4 colors and not any new colors?
We kind of decided if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
There you go.
I mean, we did work with Tom on the Black Friday Strat.
Yeah.
So like, just kind of experimenting and just looking at comments, and there's a lot of requests for that damn racing stripe. People want the stripe. But yeah, we were just kind of like, well, man, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is what people have been asking for decades. Let's give it to them.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so you did the Strat. Can you do the Mark Hoppus jazz bass? There's people that want that so bad. You could, I guess. All right. I had a couple of comments on, I want a custom shop Tom Strat. I call the team built or go through like Music Zoo. They were able to make some similar to that, and then Fender basically said, no, Tom has that design. You can't do it. Is that true?
That is true. Yes.
Okay.
Just out of respect for our relationship with Tom, I mean, it is a Fender Stratocaster with a humbucker that we, made, but out of respect to Tom, like, if we're gonna do those guitars, it's Tom's guitar, and he should be, it's his guitar.
So, right. Yeah. And we've had a couple of people that like they've called and then Fender will say, we'll make you something similar and then you can rewire it, but like we can't make that exact thing. Also, are you familiar with how in demand the hardtail Jazzmaster is? Kind of like the Jim Root, and Tom had one similar back in the day. Alex kind of made that.
Yeah, Alex made both of those.
Yeah, so it's a very popular design for the punk rock community.
I know, and it's interesting too, because I do like trim. Like, I do like resting my hand on it and just giving it a little love and just getting that little warm.
Right.
I do like that, but Jazzmasters are temperamental, man. They can be hard. Like there's a lot of room between the tail piece and the bridge. There's a lot of noise to be made if it's not set up properly, all that stuff. And that's kind of where my thing is. Like, I'm not a huge Jazzmaster player, but the one I do have is a hardtail. Same shit. Because I can just rest my hand on the bridge. I can palm mute. I can do, I can play loud. I don't have to worry about intonation, things like that. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of people kind of research. I feel like we were talking about, like, as a millennial, like, I'm looking at Sum 41. I'm looking at these artists. Like, Derek had a telly out. It didn't have, like, most tellies don't have trem, but I mean, like, there's probably a reason why he gravitated towards that guitar in those days, is because it didn't, and he could palm mute, and he could be aggressive and hard on it. And I feel kind of like with the resurgence of that late 90s, early 2000s music that is so massive, that a lot of fans are being like, hey, this is what we want.
Awesome. I think that answers all of mine, Stefan.
Pull up my notes here. Is there anything, Schultz, that you want to talk about, maybe of what you're going on, maybe outside of Fender? Any, musical works or anything like that you want to throw out there? I know you kind of play with certain people and, pick up and play, but is there anything that you wanted to maybe let our audience know of what you do aside from Fender?
There's a couple. The one I'm really stoked on. I'm keeping it pretty close to the chest right now, but I'm recording with an artist, and hopefully have it finished up in the next couple weeks, and then we'll put it out. I'm sure you'll like it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tell us that fun fact about the bass in the Dance With Me video, for the fans.
Oh, that my DD Ramon bass?
Yeah. So,
okay, this is good.
Yeah.
So I should have grabbed this in the other room. So I worked with Fender and DD Ramon's estate years ago to put out a DD bass, and I've had this bass forever, and it's kind of my go-to bass actually. It's a white P bass, 70s P bass, and it's like, I don't know if it's because DD's name's on it and he's one of my idols, but it's like my thing. And so while they were getting ready to do this video, which was kind of a nod to the Ramones, Mark wanted to use something that was similar, like Olympic white P bass, and but it wasn't like just all brand new and shiny. Like, they were going for that look, and Brian actually hit me up. He's like, "Yo, you guys have anything?" I'm like, "I mean, nothing custom shop. Everything's made to order, so we'd have to. We would miss deadlines. But like, I do have a DD Ramon bass. That's my personal bass, and you're more than welcome to use it for this." And he's like, "Okay." So D just came over to my house, grabbed the bass, we hung out, and then brought the bass back. But yeah, it's funny because he put like purple tape on the strap horn so like it wouldn't fall off, and he's like, "I left it on there for you." I was like, "Thanks," and I'll never take it off. So
That's really cool.
It was kind of full circle, but I was gonna be like, "Oh, Mark can have it," but I'm like, usually I would, but I'm like, man, it's like one of the things that, like, knock on wood, a house fire, I'd grab that, So I was like, Mark has a lot of bases. He's gonna be okay.
He'll be fine.
He'll be fine.
If you think about it, you should post a picture on your Instagram of it. I'd love to see it, like a real shot of it.
I will absolutely do that.
Awesome, thank you.
Of course.
I think that's all the questions that we have. Brian, was there any other last question that you had, or?
No, just thank you so much for bringing the Strats back. That was the ultimate guitar for me in high school, and to have it back, and it's literally the same guitar, is so awesome, and I'm excited to see what you do next.
Thank you guys, and both of you. Thank you guys. I know, just even like working on this project, I've leaned on you guys for like, what songs are, when you close your eyes and think about that Strat, just hit you the hardest in the face, and you guys have been awesome friends and partners, and I'm honored to be on this with you guys.
It means a lot to us, and it really, really does. But yeah, I guess that wraps up for this episode. Again, Schultz, thank you so much for jumping on. I know you're extremely busy, so taking the hour out of your day really does mean a lot to both Brian and I. So thank you.
Yeah.
Of
I hope
course.
I asked you all the controversial questions, and maybe when more guitars come out in a year from now, we can have another talk.
I
Maybe.
would love that.
Sounds
Yeah.
Maybe.
All right, guys. For that, we'll let you guys go. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next. Bye for now.